Good afternoon. My name is Lalit Rao and I'm the editor of www.cinemapoet.com website. And today I have with me a special guest, Mr. Uberto Pasolini, a renowned producer as well as promising director.
Promising.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pasolini, for giving me a chance to speak to you. Mr. Pasolini, first of all, could you tell me about your transition from producer to director? How did it come about? Were you not satisfied with your career as a producer?
No, I'm very satisfied with the career as a producer, or even if I'm not satisfied with it, that is something I think I can do a little bit. I came into directing this specific film because of circumstances. I first found a story that was interesting to me. I then researched the story, got involved in writing the script of the story, and once I had written the script, I felt that the story belonged to me more than anybody else, and I decided to direct it. But there was no conscious decision of stopping being a director and starting being stopping being a producer and starting being a director. I am not a director, I just directed a film. It's two very different things.
True. So, as you told that you have been a producer of many films which we feel are important in the history of cinema, Full Monty.
One film, maybe.
Yeah,
and it's not important in the history of cinema.
No,
it's
of course.
one lucky film.
Well,
One
you are being very modest over here.
No,
I would say Full Monty has inspired many generations of film.
Generations?
Why not?
I hope not.
I would say.
Generations? We have how many generations have gone by? It was only 10 years ago.
Okay.
A few people, maybe a few people got ideas.
Yeah, true.
Thank you. That's very sweet of you. Thank you very much.
True. But still, there are not in the history of cinema. If one looks closely, or if you ask me, there are not many producers who turn directors, except for Babette Schroeder, who is a renowned name. So how did you prepare yourself to direct this film? Because producing a film is a different department, directing a film is a different department. You might get interesting things, interesting ideas, but to direct a film is altogether
Stanley
different.
Kramer, very famous producer who made some wonderful films. Maybe, in fact, the most nominated producer in the history of Hollywood. Anyway, how did I make the transition? I was able to make the transition because I had a group of people around me who sustained me in the effort of taking the story to the screen. In fact, they made the film more than I had. I wrote the script with a Sri Lankan. I was produced by a Sri Lankan, a wonderful director called Kasana Vitanage. The cast was Sri Lankan, the crew was Sri Lankan. I was surrounded by a group of very generous, very patient people that carried me through the making of the film. That's how it happened. It wasn't so much preparation. Of course, before we made the film, I watched a lot of cinema.
What kind of cinema?
Asian cinema, European cinema, cinema of the dispossessed, cinema dealing with poverty, cinema dealing with families, cinema dealing with sport, all sorts of cinema to try and decide what language we wanted to adopt. That was a process that we had to go through, certainly to decide the style of the film, the tone of the film, the language of the film. The film came because of the efforts of many people. And it was those many people who were Sri Lankans on the whole, majority, that made what is now a Sri Lankan film, and which is why it has been so well received in Sri Lanka, where we shot it.
Mr. Pasolini, yesterday I attended the press conference where you told that you were inspired to make this film when you read in Sydney Morning Herald a small snippet about this football team. If you really look at it in a positive manner, this might be a treatment for a short film, a small thing. So how did you develop the scenario in such a way that it grew up to a 90-minute film?
Well, I think actually the interesting thing about the original story is not the sports side, but is the background. I felt immediately when reading the story about the fact that 23 Sri Lankans had invented the national handball team of Sri Lanka in a country where handball is an unknown sport to try to get to the West. I thought that story was giving us the possibility of talking about all sorts of international universal issues, serious issues, poverty, immigration, the immigration laws of the West, the desire of people to move for certain periods of their lives to other countries to improve their lives at home, to deal with these stories with on the back of the handball story. So what I was interested in is understanding the reason, the motivation for people who want to travel abroad. And therefore, that's where the film concentrates most of its time. The film is 75% in Sri Lanka and 25% in Germany, maybe 80-20.
90-10, I would say. Yeah.
Maybe 90-10. And that is because we did not want to make a sports movie. We did not want to make a farce about people who couldn't play a sport and it was funny. We wanted to make a film that used the original story, the true story, to talk about different issues. And that's why it was possible to develop the 90 minutes. If in fact, you're right, if we had only made the German portion of the story, just the arrival of a Sri Lankan team that can't play handball and then disappears, then it would have been a 20-minute film.
Yeah.
We were interested in what happened before their arrival, not so much what happened after.
Mr. Pasolini, I watched your film yesterday with the audience, and I was really amazed by the response it got. People were laughing, people were applauding, and people were even, some people were even in tears, because this is the kind of something which we in India we call full money back guarantee film.
Oh, that's a great title. I want that.
Yeah.
Full money back guarantee.
Yeah, full money back film in which the spectator does not feel that he has been cheated. He has got the value of his money back.
Right.
So there is.
Let me write that down. Full money back film. Excellent.
No, I'll give you the Hindi expression.
Okay.
Full paisa vasool. I'll give you the Hindi expression. 100% full paisa. You know, paisa. P-I-S-A.
P-E-I?
Yeah, paisa is the subunit of rupee. You have a euro centime. Okay. So this is paisa. 100 paisa
Yes,
is 1 rupee.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
paisa.
Vasool.
100% paisa vasool.
100% full paisa vasool film.
Okay. That is the best news.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
A full paisa vasool film.
So, well, Machan turned out to be a full paisa vasool film in the sense that it has comedy, it has humor, it has sadness, it's all in all, it's a serious subject made in a very light fashion. So my question to you is, Mr. Pasolini, when you were making this film, did you have a notion that it might turn out to be a 100% full paisa vasool film?
I didn't, because I didn't know the expression. I was hoping that the film would deliver on both counts, meaning in terms of entertainment, both from an emotional and from a humorous point of view, and in terms of thought process, in the sense that I'd like the film to make people think, to feel the issues that are behind the film, but also to go along the film, enjoying and getting involved in the characters and in the story. So that was our hope when we made the film. It seems here in Trivandrum that we have succeeded. But, and to be honest, every festival we have shown the film at, whether it's Latin America or North America or Europe, the film has had a similar response in terms of enjoyment and understanding of the issues behind. What it didn't have is the level of extraordinary warmth that Trivandrum offered it, and I suspect that has to do with the quality of the audiences in Trivandrum and not with the film. I think that the audiences here are particularly warm, particularly attentive, particularly generous, and they were generous to my film, but I've seen them being generous to other films here.
Mr. Pasolini, next question is regarding the film. Some section of the audience found that the depiction of poverty in your film was a bit harsh.
Harsh?
Yeah, it was a bit harsh in the sense that you showed really very abject poverty. You showed people living near water and railway tracks and something like that. So anything to say about that?
We shot in real places. we shot mainly the slums are shot in 3 slums in Colombo. That's what they look like. That is the kind of life that many people live. And we didn't make them up. So I'm not sure how you can be told that they're harsh. I have seen similar conditions, similar situations, economic situations in India. I have seen them in Latin America. I have seen them in North America. I have seen them in Italy. What we did is we photographed real situations. Now, I have also to point out that within the film itself, there are some of the characters who do not live in those extreme situations. The reality is that a lot of people who travel abroad from countries, in developing countries, to the West, come not from the most dispossessed class of society, but from sometimes almost middle class. There are some characters in the film. There is a character that is a doctor who comes from Pakistan, and that is based on a real person I met. So the mixture of people is there from a social background, although the majority of the people, you're right, the film is set that the main characters are from a slum in Colombo. Those are real slums.
Mr. Pasolini, your film talks about a tough question of immigration. But there might be a point of view that, in a way, it might be felt in Europe that this film is trying to support illegal immigration in a negative sense, that people can use different techniques, different methods to get into West.
I understand what you're saying. The first thing I would say is that I believe that
because this I'm talking from the perspective of audience who are not interested in Asian cinema. Imagine someone who's a fervent European person who thinks of whose interest just lie in the European Union. That kind of person or those kind of people might perceive as a film making mockery of European immigration laws.
Well, that is good, because the film wants to be a mockery insofar as the people who were the real participant of the real story made a mockery of the immigration rules by avoiding the immigration rules through this crazy system. I strongly believe that the philosophy behind the immigration rules of much of the West is mistaken. I think that the West demands free movement for its financial capital, but does not accept free movement of the human capital, which is often the only capital that developing countries have. And I think that is an unjust philosophy on which to base immigration rules. One of the things I was hoping to do in a small way was to remind people in the West that the people that we see on our streets, working in our factories, in our fields, in our hospitals, from outside of the West, have all left behind a family, a culture, a language, their friends, everything that we take for granted. To me, these people, in one way or another, are heroes, are very brave in making these journeys, in attempting to
fight against
the system, but more than anything else, in attempting to get to a situation where they can help the families at home. It is something that Western societies on the whole did many years ago. America is colonized by people, is made up by people on the whole who were in similar situations, who were leaving the old Europe for reasons of political, but also, and more than anything else, economic. That happened 100 years ago. After the Second World War, a lot of people from Italy went to Australia, went to Latin America, went to Germany. So Europeans have in the past traveled to make their lives better. And now it's other countries who do the same. And why not? It is the unjust economics and political environment of today that makes such travel very often impossible. I'm against these barriers, and although I think the situation is extremely complex, and I wouldn't want to pretend to think that it's possible tomorrow morning to change completely and just open the gates, because the infrastructure of the West would not be able to cope with the numbers. I do believe that if the approach was taken from a different philosophical point of view, immigration, economic migration could be regimented, regulated in such a way as to allow people who want these opportunities to have these opportunities for a certain period of time, and acknowledge the fact that the Western economies do not function without immigration, whether it's legal or illegal. They simply would collapse if it wasn't for immigrant doctors, immigrant laborers, immigrant nurses in hospital, immigrant people who look after your grandfather, etc., etc. It will simply not function. And this is something is often forgotten by the very people who gain from the immigration phenomenon in the West.
Mr. Pasolini, my last question to you is about your film and its reception. Your film has so far tasted the reception in festivals,
yes,
on the art circuit. Could you please tell me about the commercial reception of your film? Has it been shown in cinema halls all over the world?
Not yet. The film has
And
only
what
been
are
shown.
you hoping for the commercial
Right. The
reception?
film
of
has
festival?
only been shown in Italy, where
Venice Film Days. Venice Film Days.
yes, but in terms of commercial release, it has only been shown in Italy and in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, it's an enormous success, very, very popular, very successful. In Italy, it suffered from some problems of distribution, and it's less successful. We think we came out at the wrong moment, and we made a number of mistakes in the distribution. We are waiting to see the release in new countries, in Germany, in France, in Canada, in Switzerland, to see how that goes before I can really answer. But I hope that it will be shown in a small way, because it is a subtitled film. It's not a European film, and subtitled films have a limited release in general, whether it's North America or Europe. But I hope it will get there, and I hope it will be appreciated and maybe make people think.
What about festival circuits? How many festivals it has toured so far?
I don't know, it's like 10 festivals now, and maybe 10 more next year.
This is 11.
I don't know, I have to count them. It's 3 in Germany, and then Venice, and Toronto, and Sao Paulo, and Dubai, and I'm missing something out. One in France and one in Yes, this is the 11th. This is a big festival. Some of them were smaller, some of them were.
I wish you all success for your festival, and
That's
thank you
very,
very
very
much for
kind.
sharing your views about the film and
That's most
complex
kind.
issues.
Most kind for your generous comments on the film and for your interest in the background.
Thank you.
Thanks. And thank you very much.